Hello to you all. I'm pretty sure most of you are thinking, well, he keeps doing these fixes and we're getting closer to the Pride of Longbridge, but we haven't had a proper journey. No, I am quite aware that we had like a brief 3-minute video of me driving to the MOT centre. I didn't actually film on the way back because I was a little bit conscious about the front brake and I had to concentrate. But the truth is that that's been sorted now. It was no big deal. I just wanted to drive without filming. It's something that I'm not really thinking about. So I have done quite a few fixes to the car since then. There is one more fix that I'm going to be doing in the next episode in probably a couple of days from when this is released. We are about a week away from the Pride of Longbridge. So that's to look forward to. I have driven the car briefly a few times off camera because, as I say, there's just some things that I don't like to do on camera. There's some things that I've got to concentrate on. But this video is for all of you guys that have been following my videos. We are finally going to have a nice little drive in the car, and hopefully I can get the camera work semi-decent for you to actually see what's going on. Oh, and one last thing, obviously, because it's a rover, I've got to go with the old stereotype. There you go. I do live in Birmingham, Peaky Blinder country. Yes, the old man stereotype of driving a rover, it's got to be done. Got to be done. As you can see, I have been driving in this car, honestly, because the wheel actually protrudes this part of the wing where it sort of swoops down. You get so much rubbish coming along, but I'm really pleased. I mean, I took it for a drive the other day and it's good to see the protections working. What I have noticed is quite a bit of brake dust on the front wheels. I suspect it is just bedding into the actual discs. The discs look a lot better now. They're a lot less pitted, and the disc brake noise is actually lowering down. But anyway, let's get going. Well, that's shut you up. That's the trick. Put it in reverse for a few seconds and it won't stall in drive. Common fault on these. I have to say, she looks really, really pretty. Right, I've done that, and it's got up to temperature. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Right, let's go. Let's go. And the reverse, it wants to creep in reverse. Fantastic. Let's go. Just put the windows up. Oh.
Don't forget your glasses, Andrew. Insurance people will see this and think, no, we're going to put his insurance up. And that is a thing. Insurance companies do look up cars on YouTube, registrations. Type this registration in, type my Focus's registration in, and you'll immediately come up with my channel page. That is a thing. And they do watch your videos, and believe you me, if they see some of the things that YouTubers do, put their insurance premiums up. Well, do you know what? This is just really, really smooth straight away. Smooth as a whisper. I just slotted it straight into drive. There is an element of creep, but it's not as bad as it was before because we haven't got a binding brake caliper. And the brakes, yeah, they feel good. Brake pedal feels nice and firm. And now we're gonna go. Okay, that's quite quick. I'm not joking when I say this is quick. I mean, a K series doesn't sound that refined, if I'm honest, beyond about 2500 RPM, 3000 RPM. It sounds quite nice in this though. The gearbox certainly makes it sing a little bit differently. It's what I quite like about automatics is that the engines sound completely different from the manual versions, but it's the same engine. Yeah, steering's nice. I can do a test. Lovely. No pulling from one side to the other. I mean, that's low speed braking. It wasn't even an emergency brake, but that's all good. It feels firm and positive. And the intermittent wipers are working very, very nicely on this wet day. Go. Yeah, it just pulls, absolutely pulls. Do you know what? This engine doesn't feel as if it's working at all. I mean, I'm going 30 miles an hour down the road. In my Focus, I'll be stuck in 4th gear at about 2000 RPM. I can tell you now, I'm doing about 1600. That's the difference between a CVT and a torque converter automatic. The CVT keeps the engine in exactly the right power band at the right time, so peak engine performance is kept at all times under all road conditions, driving conditions. I mean, I'm not even trying. I mean, this is ridiculous. 30 miles an hour in this car feels too slow because the engine just isn't working. 1600 RPM exactly at 30 miles an hour. This is just obscene. But it's just really smooth. The only thing I would say, pulling away off the driveway just then, particularly when it's cold, the engine had warmed up after a few minutes of me fiddling around with the camera and chucking the tripod in the boot. When it's cold, it gets a bit jerky moving off. Sorry about that, I had to stop because I noticed one of the actual windscreen washer jets had decided to come off the surface again. That one is not a very flush fit. The technique with this car, as I say, we've got to temperature. Fuel, I think it's better on the fuel than the Focus. Again, fuel economy, it would be better than a 4-speed traditional torque converter automatic because it's in the right gear ratio at any given moment. Jag watch. Sorry, I've got to keep doing Jag watch every time I see one. I would actually like a Jag, but I don't think I could stomach the fuel costs and the cost of repairs. What I have noticed is the clock has started to lose a digit occasionally. This is a common fault with these clocks, but apparently if you get a hot iron to the circuit board at the back, it works a treat. My old one wasn't even working at all. In fact, the printed strip had there was actually a tear in it, so mine wouldn't have worked. My old one wouldn't have worked anyway, but I can get that out and get a hot iron on the back of the circuit board and it would basically get it working. Anyway, you put it in drive and there's a slight jolt. I mean, I put it in reverse and you hardly feel a thing. and I have checked the transmission fluid level a few times. That's nice. Just trying to get my windows correct, right? But yeah, it's better on the fuel as well because it's in the right ratio at the right time. It's just more efficient. Ready, go. That was 2,500 RPM, 2,000 RPM, 1,800, 16. The gearbox, the gear ratios are just going down, 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 down all the time. Well, no, essentially the gear ratios would be going up all the time, hence why the RPMs are coming down. Apparently the normal working ratios for the gearbox would, in normal mode, is about 3,500 RPM to 4,500. In sport mode, it's 3.5. I think it's 4.5 to 5,500. 5,500. Jesus. I mean, to be fair on this, it can go up to 8,000 RPM according to this. So it is a rev monster. I don't think even a Z-Tech can rev that much. Oh no, I'm stuck behind a learner. To get this all the time down here, Sunday morning, learners absolutely godforsaken everywhere. But if I'm going on 30, there's an actual test you can do. A main problem with this gearbox is the primary bearing. Now the primary bearing is located behind the oil pump along the end cover. It is actually doable in situ. You can actually just take the end cover off, take the oil pump out and pull the bearing out. It is a common problem, and the best way of diagnosing it is driving at 30 miles an hour and then putting it in sport and listening for a change in note, if there's any change in noise from the engine. The primary bearing will only make a noise when you pull away in gear. It won't make a noise if you're stationary in or out of gear. Oh dear, this is torturous. Absolute torturous. It's just incredibly smooth. And the suspension is exceptionally good at what it does. I can feel the double wishbones working really nicely at the front. The only problem with double wishbones, and a lot of manufacturers tend to favour Matheson struts, is because one, they're cheaper to produce, and secondly, wishbones don't exactly let excessive amounts of travel at the front. I mean, when I say travel, wheel travel, whereas Matheson struts does. I think it's a little bit more of a sportier ride, essentially. Come on. Now the test I'm about to do is to test the primary bearing, so I'm going to slot it into sport now, and I can hear absolutely no change in engine or gearbox tone or noise whatsoever. Put it back into drive. Yeah, that's it. And that's your test for the primary bearing. So the primary bearing in my car is good as of this moment, which is remarkable considering that the gearbox has gone, assuming that this is the original gearbox, it's potentially, it may not be, because they are prone to failure at early ages. That is possibly down to a poor oil change, using the incorrect oil. If you put the incorrect oil in, you might as well just throw, I don't know, glass into your gearbox. It will just break it. That's a terrible metaphor. Just incredibly smooth. I am going to actually pop to the shops because I need something, and I've just realised I've gone the wrong damn way. Oh well, you know what, I'm sure the petrol station won't mind if I just do a U-turn. So folks, got to be done. hear that engine. Woo! That's only a sound you will hear on a CVT MG Rover product. As I say, this gearbox was only ever fitted to the K series 1.6 or 1.8. Mainly the 1.8. If you have a Rover 25 after 2001, you will have a 1.6 CVT. If you've got a 2000 Rover 25 CVT, it will have the 1.8. You lucky sod, they are very, very rare cars. But I've got most of my information from the MGFTF Steppy Facebook group. Oh yes, that is such a nice sound. The problem is I run out of road and the speed, I get up to 30 miles an hour and I have to stop. Because of course somebody could be watching this, and I always stick to the speed limits. Don't you? Put it into sport mode now. Now sport mode increases the revs and makes it more responsive. Oh, flipping heck! It does that indeed. It went up to 5,000. Oh, that's a bit. Oh. Oh, it's going mad. It's going over 2,000 RPM. Now let's go for it. Okay, that's quite. Yeah. 3.5, 4,000 RPM with absolutely light throttle. Now we've got to 30. I have to stop. I'll put it back into manual. Actually, I'll go into manual. Let's see what we are. Right, third, fourth. Okay, I can upshift and downshift on the gear lever, and it will let me go in fifth. And so the gearbox won't let me go into an inappropriate gear. And as someone who rarely drives manuals, I'm a bit out of touch with driving the manual way, but this semi-automatic. Oh, now that's interesting. I did not touch the gear lever and the gearbox has put me straight back into fourth automatically. So it will do it by itself, probably to prevent transmission damage or latching. I'll put it back in normal mode now, drive. And we go into the shops. Perfect. Right, lovely. All good here. Right. I'll just go get a couple of bits on the shoppies, and yeah, how very unprofessional to show my camera work. And this is what I actually use to keep it on the dashboard. But the problem is, and a lot of YouTubers will actually experience this. Yeah, you can't really find anything that doesn't really move. If it's fixed to the car, it will move with the car. But I hope that was decent enough footage for you. But yeah, really good. The box works exceptionally well in all functionalities. The only thing, as I said, it's just the actual the torsion damper. That's the proper name for it. I mean, if I actually switch it on so you can actually hear it properly, I'll go around to the front actually. Right, it's in park, and it makes the most noise in park and neutral. Now it's warmed up now. Ignore the music that's going across. It's quiet. It's total. That torsion damper is totally quiet in park and neutral. I mean, I am probably going to get a new one, just for the benefit of I've got the part in the very least if something was to happen to it, because it is known that the springs can fracture, crack, and then you lose drive. But it's very rare that happens. Usually they just rattle, and I suspect that because mine quietens down, it doesn't have any cracked springs, and probably nowhere near that. But you never know with these things. But that is really quiet. I mean, if I just put it in reverse, neutral. There's a little bit more in drive, but it's absolutely minimal. And I think that's not, yeah, it is what it is, but that's what happens with my gearbox. I mean, as I say, there's nothing wrong with the primary bearing. We've done all the necessary tests. Some of them I've read from MG Rover bulletins about the issue with this gearbox. Not all of them have primary bearing problems. Some have been replaced, some of them haven't. It is a part that is easy to get hold of and not too hard to replace, from what I've been told. So it's not too much of an issue. But the main thing is it's got the correct fluid in it. The filters you cannot obtain, which is just ridiculous. Let me just shut this door. You literally just can't obtain the filters. So I've had to just clean mine out as much as possible and put it back in. That's a good thing, because at the end of the day the box works perfectly fine, and multiple oil changes will help the engine. So I'll just have to change the oil probably once every year, maybe 2 years. It is recommended to change the oil every 2 years, but I'm going to go into more detail in another gearbox video. But right now I'm just going to go in the shop. I have to say, before I actually go into the shop, I find these switches really frustrating. I mean, these switches, I think this is out of an R8. These are definitely out of R8. I mean, they are so 90s, it's untrue. But what frustrates me is I tend to open the driver's window and the passenger's window at the same time. So what I've got to do is I've got to passenger window with that hand, driver's window with that hand, but I can't really do it together because then I take my hands off the wheel if I'm driving. It's just really frustrating that I have to do it both in one go. Whereas with the Focus, you've literally got a switch and you've got both drivers and passengers, and you can just flip the both and they both come down. Honestly, it is really archaic in that respect. It is a dated car. Let's face it, this car came out in 1995 and they barely changed it. There is a lot of switch gear that is very familiar. I mean, these are actually new. These are new. That's new to the Mark IIs. This is new. Actually, I'd say pretty much all of this is new, including this, which looks similar to the earlier clock, but as you can see, oh, it's 54. Maybe we haven't lost a digit. That one's going a bit funny at the moment, but you know, it's the correct time. Yeah, I mean, this was an earlier thing where we had the R8s had airbag warning lights there instead of there. So they just put airbag on it. The horns are definitely, yeah. These controls, I never use them in my Focus. And I don't care that I've lost the functionality because I've fitted that. There is probably a way that I can solder the wiring for that into that, but the truth is, a long term, I may want to get an original radio, but then again, apparently they're rubbish. So I've got the Bluetooth radio and I think it really goes nicely. It really doesn't look out of place at all. Still got a bit of seesawing going on here. It's just rubbish quality, really. I don't like the airbag, the fact that they all go wavy, but there's nothing I can really do about that. And the sticker covers up most of the wear on the surface, and I actually like the fact it's matte. And somebody pointed this out. If it was gloss, it would be even more. Can you actually? No, I can actually see the reflection just here, but because it's matte, it's not so overbearing. But if it was gloss, you'd see it would be dreadful on a summer's day. So I think I made the right decision, and it was the right size for me to cover the holes. And you know, at the end of the day, that will stay there for the rest of the car's life, hopefully. Beyond my ownership, maybe if I move it on, but I don't think I'm going to move this car on somehow. I really don't. I think this is one heck of a keeper. Right, I've got to go and do some shopping. Oh, I know what people mean about the hatchback. I mean, when the HHR came out in this form, I think people were a little bit disappointed about the slightly truncated back end of this car, where you've just got this little notch. But my argument is the Rover R8 200 was notchy at the back. It looked like it had a boot, but it didn't have a boot. But the 400 looked well proportioned with that extra boot. Again, on this, the saloon car, it's a little bit more well proportioned. But then again, I do think the saloons, again, the profile looks better, but they look a bit bulky at the back, like they've just had a block added on at the back.
So it's just a weird car, isn't it, in terms of its size. It's, you know, bigger than a Ford Focus that was its main rival, but way smaller than a Mondeo, but priced at almost Mondeo prices, if I'm not mistaken. Those of you who are into Rover 45s probably know a little bit more than me, but I can understand why people just never bought these, because the pricing was just ridiculous for them. But yeah, they later came out with the saloon version, which sort of corrected this. I really like the Mark II rear front. I like the front end. The rear end, I know why they did it, and I think they made it look a little bit more modern, especially with this new bumper. I definitely think the bumper design is actually of its time. Moving the reg plate off the boot was a bad idea though, because it just looks like, you know how it seemed to be a modification on Mark 1 Focuses to have the flush boot. I just think they just look, oh, I mean, why someone just spent an awful amount of time putting filler across and smoothing it out and then spraying it up, and I just think, why but the next episode is going to be, so I can't use my hand in this, it's going to be this. I have actually managed to source some bumper brackets from someone on one of the Facebook groups who I will be doing a shout out for, because I think they're absolutely amazing at what they do, and apparently they can achieve so good results that you wouldn't believe that there's any hanging bumper at all. So not particularly this side, but this side is going to be corrected as well. They're clamps that bolt through to the bottom of the back bumpers, and they clamp up to a little chassis rail that goes across underneath the boot, or by the side of the boot I should say. All that's required is drilling a 10mm bolt in the right place in that bottom of the bumper, and it actually brings it back up. Apparently what I did with the clip, the guy who I bought them off said that is 50% of the job completed, because you've got it more taut against the body. That is very, very recommended. So the job I did, it is recommended to do that job with the nut and the bolt and the washer to tighten them against the body, and then his brackets will take the rest of the slack off. So basically I'm going to have a very nice fitting bumper, hopefully come the Pride of Longbridge. That episode will be going out before the Pride of Longbridge, but yeah, it's a starship good car, apart from the fact it gets awfully dirty really quickly, and the brake dust, my god, I expected some brake dust, but that's quite a lot of brake dust. But at least I know they're working. I suspect that the brake pads are trying to bed against that disc again, because they are slightly pitted, and the noise I'm hearing is slightly scored discs. The rear brakes, again, the rear brakes have got something going on. This is one journey. That's a lot, and there's a lot of stuff that's gone. I think that's just dirt actually. What I was getting before was this tarry stuff. I think it was bits of stuff stuck in the tyre. I always knew it was going to get very dirty. I did say it's the only thing about cars, when you make them nice and clean underneath, you know that it's not going to stay that way. It's like when the cars are going through the factory in the body of white, as they call it, and the underside is so clean, and it's cleaner than your house carpet. It's literally that good, and you know it's only going to stay like that until the moment it leaves the factory. Headlights are looking really good, and that lovely new grille, I really do like it. It's beaming in this sunlight. I am going to check the coolant level after this journey, but even the white smoke has reduced on this journey as well. Project Beatrix is no longer a project. I mean, technically you can call these cars a rolling restoration, because quite frankly at this age they all are. You can't get away from that. But you know what, Beatrix is going to need a few bits and pieces doing to it. Let's say the torsion damper for me is just an annoyance. It's not something that I feel is going to fail at all. My car seems to be not too bad on that side of things. I have heard from a couple of CVT owners that theirs doesn't rattle at all, which is just remarkable, really. So it is proven that not all components are made equal, and hopefully, from what I've seen today and what I've experienced in the last few journeys, I have a good gearbox in this car that I've just got there in time. I think if that gearbox had continued running on that old engine oil, or that old CVT fluid for any longer, I think we may have had some problems. But after 18 years, I'm hoping that may have had a CVT fluid change, but it may not have done. And you are supposed to change this fluid every few years, which is why so many of these completely fail, because the fluid isn't changed. The filter isn't such a critical point, because I think it's been proven through the lack of basically availability of new gearbox filters that you don't really need to change the gearbox filter. The most important, number one, is changing the oil every 2 years for the correct oil, correctly and to the right level. And I think that's number one point with these. The filters are a secondary concern unless your filter is damaged. If you can get a new one, get a new one. If you can't, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. My car operates perfectly fine. I would possibly, and this is something I would like to do, is drive another 45 CVT 1.8 to see how theirs feels like, because I've got something to compare my gearbox to. But from what I've been told, slight jerkiness when cold, a little bit, it feels like a slipping clutch. That's how it feels if you're used to driving manuals. But ultimately very smooth, very responsive, and actually it is quite fun to drive when you start getting into it. So, you know, all those haters who say that these gearboxes are shit, I don't know what you're talking about. You've never driven one, have you? Right. Let's get in. Stop waffling, Andrew. Now, in truth, I do like some microfiber cloths. I'm just going to keep them around the car because I feel that I need to keep some with the car just to do the odd bit of cleaning. I always have microfiber cloths, and they were cheap. £1.79 for 4 is cheap. And I'm going to demonstrate something with this washing up liquid that I've bought. Do you see what I mean? These door pockets are absolutely sugar. They are, aren't they? They just are shocking. You can't even get this in there. That's a really big fail. Really big fail. Inadequate door pockets, and that's not an appropriate place to put that. I will put that somewhere else. But yeah, that's just no. Something I have noticed as well, unfortunately, we have an oil leak around the actual struts itself. Now these, I believe, they are the originals. Now apparently Rimmer Brothers are the only place you can get these genuine ones, and they're about £30 for one. You're joking. I've actually got some aftermarket ones that I am going to fit, but I'm going to fit them after the Pride of Longbridge, because I'm hoping to do trying to spread the videos out a bit more and do a series of little repairs here and there. But it starts with this really that I haven't really looked at. This one actually looks dry. It actually looks fine there, but that's the one that's failed. I mean, we're getting to the point where I'll just demonstrate this now. I'll just see, take my hand off, there we go. It's supposed to lift from that point. I mean, look how high. Oh yeah, it stopped. Literally, that is the point at which it kind of either decides to stay up or it falls. That's way too low. It has gone weak, but I suspect it's only one shock absorber that's gone. But the truth is, if that's gone, that's not going to be far behind, because they are both the originals. Yeah, this is the same as well. So I think Stabilus is the make. I've used them before with the Focus, and they will do an absolute treat. But anyway, I will get going now.
that's literally how quickly you can go from 0 to 30 miles an hour. I mean, literally 4 seconds, maybe 3 seconds at a push. So good. I really do think that this puts a Ford Sigma and Z-Tech to shame. Coincidentally, if you're into Caterhams and you know a lot about Caterham 7s, this engine was in Caterham's main engine for the 7 for quite a few number of years. I think from around 1990 to 2006, when the last supplies of K-Series had dried up, and they basically had to go and find another engine. I mean, what engine could we have that could go in the 7? Well, it had to be light, so presumably all aluminium is a positive on that side. A good horsepower to weight as an actual comparison. And quite a few other things really they were looking for, and they literally had a list of 300 engines. Pretty much every engine godforsaken going, but ideally the lighter engine the better, particularly in a Caterham 7. And the only engine they could find was the Ford Sigma. They literally, that was about the only engine really that was viable for that actual car. And it turned out to be a cracking engine, because they kept that engine in the 7 until the Ford Sigma engine finished production in about 2018. So again, another long-lived engine. And quite ironically, the Sigma and the K-Series are very comparable engines in terms of being all aluminium, mass-produced pretty much everywhere. You'd virtually have one on every street, either engine or both, or multiple numbers of both. They were that common. So yeah, quite ironic really that the Sigma replaced this engine, but the truth is they'd have probably kept using the K-Series because a lot of manufacturers believed in it, and Lotus certainly did. So, you know, anybody who says these engines are absolutely garbage do not know what they're talking about. I knew what I was getting into. I always wanted a K-Series, and I never looked at the engine in that harsh manner. You're always wary about the head gasket thing, because unfortunately it is a weak point, but the actual engine as a design is superb. I don't think there are many engines that can touch it, not from the time period anyway. So we have a car that dates back to 1992 with the Honda Domine, but it really was a bit older than that, because the rear suspension on this car is identical to the rear suspensions they used to use on the Honda Civic, the earlier one, the Honda Concerto, which was used as the basis for the Rover R8, and earlier. In fact, I think this rear suspension can date back to about 1986. Just ridiculous, and it feels ridiculously good for an 80s independent multi-link rear suspension. The wishbone being a very new thing, I suspect, to the Honda Domine in 1992. I mean, if you've seen a picture of the Honda Domine and a Rover, a 400 HHR, you wouldn't think they were the same car. They did a really good job with the fact that they were kind of more restricted than they were with the Rover 600 or the Honda Accord. That actually looks very similar. The Honda, you can actually tell the 600 is kind of a Honda Accord, but they did a very good job with the styling, and the same guy who styled the 600 styled the 75. So there was a lot of joined up thinking, as it were. So you have the basis of the chassis, which really dates back far earlier than the Honda Domine. Then you have the K-Series, which dates its origins back to 1989 as a 1.4 single cam or twin cam engine, which this is. The 1.8 being subsequently made from about, I think, 1996, 95. That was when they were trying to loosened their reliance on Honda for the bigger engines. So the Honda F series, H series, I believe they were all the engines used, particularly in the Rover 600. And this gearbox, even though ZF first introduced this gearbox in the Rover Metro in 1992, its origins date back to 1986 pretty much. It is the second generation CVT transmission. It's the second actual CVT made. The first one was the in the actual famous Van Dorn transmission, Variomatic, which you would see in many DAFs. And this was the second generation, the second CVT gearbox of its kind. And this version has only been tweaked with a bit of electronic software. So the architecture is extremely old. You know, we have Phillips screws instead of Torx bits or spline bits, which everybody had pretty much moved on to. We have Jubilee clamps in certain places, but spring clamps on some certain hoses. There was an awful lot of part sharing on these cars. I mean, these door mirrors were fitted to 25s and 75s of the same age, but a lot of the switchgear, as I said before, is very reminiscent of Rover R8s. I mean, these wiper stalks look exactly the same as Rover R8s. I have to say, these wiper stalks are incredibly good to touch and use. They are very classy. They are far better than the Ford ones that I've used in the past. What are you doing, Twit? But that's basically where I'm going to leave you now. The Pride of Longbridge is next week, and I will hopefully be seeing one or two of you there, in your Rovers or not. So please come and say hello. You will spot this car a mile off, if you do know the car. As I say, most of you will know the car after you've watched half of my videos. So yeah, I will see you there. I have no idea where I'm going to be parking. I will try and park in the Rover 45 area. I may not be able to do so. I might just be put in amongst a load of random cars. But we're just going to have to see. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little ride out with me. Saying that, I just can't get over how nice this car is to drive. I was told that 45s are quite, they're understated. I think when people go on about cars this age, they think about Focus Mark 1s, Ford Focus Mark 1s, number one. And I've got one and I know why, but these are very understated for what they are. And for a slightly bigger car, it doesn't handle like a bigger car. It is slightly more wiry, it's not as pointy, but as I said before, it does everything that you need it to. It's very, very comfortable. It's more comfortable than the Mark 1.